to get this program rolling. I want to thank everyone for joining us for our Informing the Industry webinar of when ICE comes to the job site to know your rights and protect your crew. I want to thank Miller Johnson and Kevin and Michael specifically for presenting again and kind of their second of their follow-up to the I-9 webinar from maybe 3 weeks ago. You can find that on our website too if you missed it. But we will be recording this and we'll be sending it out for everyone as well so you can reference it. ICE's what to do on that is kind of up to the company, but knowing what you can do is very helpful to establishing some internal policies and procedures for both general contractor and trade contractor. So again, thank you, Kevin and Michael, and the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Greg. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. This was ABC's idea to present on this issue, and it's a really good one. Very timely for all of you, and frankly, for employers of any size or in any industry. You can hardly watch the news without seeing something about ICE, what they're doing, what they say they're going to be doing, and the impact that it's having on people. And I can tell you, although for me, sometimes it's hard to know in the news what's real, what's being overblown, what's actually going on. This activity by ICE is real. It is happening. If you haven't had the displeasure of having to deal with this agency yet, the chances of you having to do it are real. I don't want to overstate it, of course, but the local ICE agents that we know, that we deal with from time to time, they are out there and they are active. They've been given marching orders, and they are taking their work to the job site. That's always been the case, but we're going to go through it here this morning and afternoon to show you how they've stepped it up and what you can do if you are so unlucky to get involved. So we're going to cover a lot, but it's not going to take very long. I'm going to tell you what ICE actually is, what they're doing today, of course, what you should do, what your employees should do if they happen to get in ICE's crosshairs, and the ways to minimize, importantly, legal risk, of course, but also disruption to your operations, because it can be very disruptive. Even rumors of ICE activity can be disruptive to your operations. This should surprise none of you that the current administration is very focused on ICE's activities in the interior of the United States. I think what the administration learned from the last go around was while there is work to be done at the border, both southern and northern borders of the United States, the reality of it is that the jobs in the United States are the thing that attracts folks to come to the United States, and is a location where they can make a lot of hay. What's been in the news recently, the president has signed that executive order titled Protecting the American People Against Invasion, and it's aimed at expanding enforcement priorities to those other than those who have serious criminal convictions. So that's sort of where a lot of the news lands is. There appears to be pretty much consensus on removing foreign nationals from the United States who have any serious criminal convictions. The administration is focusing on everyone in the United States who's not authorized to be here, and that can include some of your employees or some of your employees' family members. The executive order specifically stated that it's going to increase ICE's activities on employment audits and raids on businesses that are suspected of employing undocumented workers. So this is not something that we're sort of dreaming up, and it's not something that is rare anymore. It's real, and we'll talk a little bit in a couple of minutes of how it's being funded. I'm skipping ahead on myself a little bit, but the director of ICE calls jobs available to undocumented immigrants in the United States the root cause of illegal immigration into the United States. And actually, that concept makes a lot of sense to me. But for the availability of jobs by employers in the US, there wouldn't be as much of a draw to those entering the United States without authorization and staying here without authorization. And so the agency understands that this is a point of emphasis, and they're bringing this fight to your front door. The Attorney General in Michigan is paying close attention to this. She recently filed a brief in support of an effort to stop ICE from enforcing immigration laws at the job site. I think that litigation is going on in California. I think it's exceedingly unlikely that litigation will be effective. I think ICE has a clear legal mandate and is operating within the scope of its authorization, and we should expect this to continue for at least the foreseeable future. Obviously, if there's any progress here, you'll hear about it from us. So, what is ICE? ICE came out of the former Immigration and Naturalization Service that was disbanded after 9/11 in 2001. It is a law enforcement agency with 400 offices throughout the United States and actually the world, and more than 20,000 employees. Its budget right now is $8 billion, which of course is significant. And that agency is divided up into these three groups: Homeland Security Investigations. The one we're going to talk about today is Enforcement and Removal Operations, and the office of essentially their legal office. Enforcement and Removal Operations is the organization that is charged with the investigations and the identification and arrest of those individuals who are in the United States without authorization. So they are the actual officers that would come to a job site and attempt to detain, arrest, and remove those who are not currently authorized to live in the United States. I said their budget is currently $8 billion because the recent passage of the Big Beautiful Bill added another $170 billion to the administration's immigration efforts. $45 billion of those dollars for detention centers. And if they're going to build those detention centers, they're of course going to want to fill them. And they've dedicated $30 billion to hire more ICE officers and to maintain ICE facilities. There's an estimate out there that they expect to have 116,000 additional beds, as they call them, for detained foreign nationals. And the goal here is to fill those beds, remove those folks, and to fill them again. So ICE is fully funded, and they report that they are ready to continue their operations. Here's what I said earlier, that they're going to focus at the work site. Importantly, and this is critically importantly, and I don't want this to get lost, they're going to marshal their resources towards employers that they believe are knowingly violating the law. If you joined us for our I-9 presentation a few weeks ago, we made a significant point out of that because the law does not require you as the employer to be an expert in who is authorized to be here and who is not, what documents are real and what documents are not. the standard is that you may not knowingly employ somebody who is not authorized to work in the United States. And so that's a high standard, but I can tell you that if they believe that you've met that standard, that you know that you have folks who are not authorized to work here, the penalties will be significant. They can include criminal penalties. Up to this point, that's been fairly uncommon. I would expect that to increase significantly going forward, but it certainly can include fines and debarment is a term that we use, which the federal government, where they prohibit certain employers from engaging in any federal contracts, which can be particularly important for this industry. So the penalties are there, they're real, and they can be significant, but again, focus primarily on those who knowingly employ folks who are not authorized to be here. And I already talked about the root cause here. So local ICE has told us that they've been directed to step up their audits at the work site, and they've said in West Michigan that it's only a matter of time before most large, I don't know how they define large, but large employers are audited by them. Because that audit, we're going to talk, Kevin's going to talk a lot about what happens when they actually show up to your office. Another way for them to get involved in your business is to audit your records, meaning they have the authority to review your payroll, review your I-9s, and make determinations as to whether or not your employees are actually authorized to work here. At local ICE in and around West Michigan, the office here is responsible from the Indiana border all the way through the Upper Peninsula and west of Lansing. They're claiming that they're going to get to everybody at some point. And they've been given specific direction on increasing the number of employers inspected, devoting specific time, and using what they call performance goals, meaning they're going to be measured on these things, so and held accountable to standards. So we should expect that they're actually going to follow through, that this isn't just saber rattling. And importantly, they target all employers, not just those of a certain size, a certain industry, or in a location. Everyone is subject to being audited by ICE. And it can happen in a number of different ways. It can happen randomly. We've seen that regularly. They don't often tell us why they show up at a location. They only tell us that they're going to. It can happen because of a complaint, but mostly it's going to happen when ICE is tipped off by an employee at a particular employer. So they think they know something. They have some actual information that they can share, not just that they have a hunch that something might be going on, but that they know something. And they can report that to Homeland Security, to ICE, and ICE will act on those reports. And like I said earlier, it is a law enforcement agency, so they can use undercover agents, informants, cooperating defendants, right? When they detain a foreign national, if they work somewhere, among the first things that they'll ask is where do they work and what do they know about what's going on at their place of employment. And there can be relief from immigration consequences for those who are cooperating witnesses with the Homeland Security, with ICE. So essentially, if somebody snitches on their employer or their coworkers, they can receive immigration benefits in return for doing so. So it's very much like the type of law enforcement actions that you see other agencies engage in, and you see in the movies and on TV and that sort of thing. And they're gonna be aggressive doing it again for those who are knowingly doing it. So that's sort of the framework of what's going on out there. Kevin is gonna take you through the details of what happens when they show up at the job site, what you can and can't do.
Thank you, Mike. And just sort of to piggyback off what Mike was saying, we know, it's hard because you're getting so much information in the media, what's actually going on. And we could say firsthand, we've dealt with clients who have both been had worksite audits, had random pop-ups in West Michigan area from ICE officers. I've sat in with clients, talked to the officers about their directives and randomly sampling and coming into different work sites, as well as dealt with situations where ICE has put undercover agents in their specific work sites, had them interview for jobs, had them get a job, go through the whole process of what was it like to complete the I-9, what documentation did they ask you for, and using that all to set up the employer. So these are things that are real. They're things that aren't just happening in major markets. They're happening in West Michigan as well. So what to do if ICE shows up? So we've sort of broken this down into sort of 3 steps. So what you should do is sort of the initial interaction, obtaining specific documentation from the officers, and then contacting your administration or your attorney. So first thing that you all should probably know is every business is going to be different. So you need to make sure that you sit down with the decision makers of your business and decide, how are you going to handle these situations? There's not a one size, fits all approach to this. Some people may say, well, if ICE shows up, we're going to cooperate. We're going to let them, in our facility, we're going to give them what they want because we think that that's the best policy. Other individuals may say, hey, you know what? We're only going to do what's legally required. And so we're going to implement a plan and we're going to make sure that everybody's familiar with that plan. So you really have to make those decisions yourself as a business, but we're going to sort of take you through what it is that you can do. So the facilities are private property. They're not open to any unauthorized or unsupervised visitors. So just like what you would think of, you've probably heard, a police officer can't just come into your house without a warrant. The same thing goes for those private property, right? So private areas of your business, ICE agents are not permitted to enter unless they have a valid judicial warrant signed by a judge. We'll get into in a few moments what that looks like so that you'll know the difference between a judicial warrant and an administrative warrant. But you should know that private property, if ICE shows up, that they need a valid judicial warrant signed by a judge. With that initial interaction, we recommend that if ICE shows up at your facility, that you politely greet them just like you would any law enforcement officer at your facility's public entrance. You request to see their official identification and you ask them about the purpose, what's the nature of your visit. We want to make sure that we're keeping things cordial and polite. They're there to do a job. You're there to protect your business, but we want to make sure that these situations are done and handled in a polite, cordial manner. You want to request to see that official identification and make sure that this person is who they say they are, and try to get a little bit of information about why they're coming to your website. From there, we recommend that you inform that officer that you're going to need to notify human resources or whoever you designate under your plan as the person who's going to be responsible for handling situations when ICE shows up, whether that's the owner, the president, HR. You want to make sure that you notify them that you have to get in touch with that key stakeholder at your organization. Next, we suggest that you obtain documentation. So if the officer is saying that they have a warrant and they're come in to search a particular area or look for a particular person, you're gonna want to get a copy of that warrant. So ask them to see a copy of the warrant. Don't just take their word for it. Right? Ask the officer their name, their badge number, what agency they're with, and you can jot those things down. We recommend that you don't share your information or consent to access the facility. But once you get that warrant, once you're able to look at it, we would recommend that you review it to make sure for a few things. Is it a judicial warrant or an administrative warrant? That's going to be the first key thing you want to do. If it is a judicial warrant, is it signed by a judge? What was the date? What's the date that governs that warrant? Then you're also going to look at what areas or information is included within that warrant, because warrants are generally issued for specific areas, for specific purposes, for specific documents. And then the third thing that we recommend that you do is you make that contact with HR immediately. If HR isn't available, then there should be someone who is designated, sort of in that. When I was, back school days, you had that phone tree. Okay, who's the next person that we call? Right? If HR isn't available, do we go to the supervisor or a foreman? Who's going to be that next person? Shouldn't disclose any information about a particular employee, and we don't want to give consent to that officer to proceed with any enforcement action on the premises. What are the legal rights for employers and employees? So, as we mentioned, or as I mentioned earlier, there are two sort of type of warrants that we frequently see ICE use. You have the ICE administrative warrant. It's not signed by a judge. It is essentially a document that is from ICE itself, the agency. So they have the power to issue their own warrants. This may be we're looking for a particular person, and they may say, yes, we have a warrant, and they may show you something like this. One of the key things in identifying the difference between a ICE warrant, ICE administrative warrant, and a judicial warrant, usually at the very top of the document, if it says U.S. Department of Homeland Security, that's going to be administrative, issued by ICE, issued by the Department of Homeland Security. If you're going to get a judicial warrant, that's going to be issued by a federal court or state court. So it's going to have that at the top as well. So here is an example of a judicial warrant. United States District Court, right? It's issued by a court. It could be, the district court or a county. So whatever it is, it's going to have that language at the top that it's issued by a court, and then it's got to be signed by a judge. It's another example here of a administrative warrant, but you really want to understand, if you're going to take the approach that we're not going to necessarily just cooperate and let ICE in whenever they show up, you're going to want to make sure that whoever is your point person is familiar with the difference between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant. What are the employee's rights in a situation? Well, just like you probably heard all your life, they have the right to remain silent. So we recommend that not only that you, if you're speaking to your employees about what to do when ICE shows up, you inform them that they always have the right to remain silent. And just like you probably heard all your life, that you should exercise that right to remain silent. Employees in preparation, if you have employees who are concerned about ICE raid, there are some steps that we would recommend that they take just in case something happens. Those are identifying emergency contacts, making sure that they have a few particular phone numbers that are committed to memorization. ICE may take your phone, so you want to make sure that that person has, who their emergency contact is and who they're going to call if they are detained. You want to make sure that they provide daycare or schools with emergency contact to pick up their child if they do get detained, provide authorization in writing for that emergency contact to make any sort of medical or legal decisions if someone's detained, and maybe removed from the United States. You want to make sure that if they have a child, that someone's going to be able to make those decisions for the child. And then finally, we recommend that if you're having conversations with employees about what should they do to prepare, that they should make sure that they inform, their family that if they happen to be detained by ICE, that there is a online detainee locator. Sometimes it's not easy to find where someone may be located. You don't know which facility that they're going to be moved to, but there is a ICE detainee locator online, and Michael has got really good at finding people, unfortunately. So if someone is detained and you're not able to locate them, this is where we would say you want to begin. And if you need some help, Mike has become an expert at finding. How to train supervisors with dealing with ICE. Well, first thing, we want to make sure that everybody understands is you don't want to panic, right? We understand that you may have someone who's showing up with a badge and a gun and a uniform that says police, but we want to make sure we don't panic, we don't get overly hostile, that we remain calm, and we go through the steps of, introducing yourselves, figuring out who they are, making sure they are who they say they are, verifying what the purpose of the visit is. Second thing, we want to make sure that we're not sharing any information. So you don't want to volunteer for someone unless you've decided that you're going to just comply. You don't want to share any information unnecessarily. You don't want to just let someone onto your facility. But at the same time, if someone is charging in, and they've got a judicial warrant that says that they're able to search specific facilities, you don't want to obstruct them, right? If they can go into a particular area by that judicial warrant, you don't want to get in front of them. You don't want to try to hide an employee. Those are things that can get you in trouble. What you do want to do is you want to make sure that you know your plan. You want to make sure if I shows up, this is the person that we call. We have HR if it's after hours, and HR isn't available. Who's the next person in line? Want to make sure you know that process. You want to ask for time to get supervisor or HR or the owner or the lawyer on. So tell the officer, yes, please wait here in our public waiting area. I'm going to get HR or the owner or the lawyer, and we'll be with you shortly. You do want to ask that officer for identification. So again, you want to make sure that they are who they say they are, and that you're able to identify that this is an ICE officer. We've put together several of these, what I would call ICE preparedness plans for clients over the last, probably 6 or 7 months. And again, everybody's policy is a little bit different, but they cover sort of the same things. You want to make sure that everybody understands what your stance is, how you're going to handle an initial interaction, what documentation you should obtain, and who is going to be the main contact person, and what happens if that main contact person is unavailable. What documents is, if you get audited or ICE shows up, what documents are they going to request? Well, depending on the particular type of pop-up from immigration, it may be Form I-9. So they may say, hey, we're going to audit your I-9s. If that's the case, they're going to serve the employer with notice of inspection. The employer is going to have 3 business days to produce those I-9s. And the supporting documents. They may say, okay, you are required to keep supporting documents. We want to see your, all of your list A documents, or all of your identification documents. They may say, we want a copy of your payroll for this period of time. The other thing you may get is if you have ICE show up and they have a judicial warrant, they may ask for specific documents like payroll. They may ask for a personnel file for a particular person, whatever is identified in that judicial warrant. What we would recommend is that you ask for a list of whatever is seized if they do have a judicial warrant. They're required to make sure that they're giving you that inventory of the items that are taken from the facility. How can you minimize disruption and legal risk while on site? One, if you were at our last presentation, is making sure that you take that Form I-9 seriously. So making sure whenever you're onboarding someone that you're doing it correctly, it doesn't just get thrown in with some of the other documents when you're trying to get someone into the job, but you make sure you take it seriously, that you do it correctly, that you're verifying the documents to make sure that you at least believe on their face that they're accurate and true documents. Secondly, audit your I-9s, audit your records periodically, making sure even if you're not doing all of them, take 10% of them every few months and just randomly audit to make sure that you're doing it correctly. E-Verify, if you're not signed up for E-Verify, it's an additional tool that you can use to make sure that you're verifying that someone is authorized to work in the United States. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Some people slip through the cracks, but if you're looking for another tool to minimize the risk that you may have someone who's unauthorized to work and in the United States illegally, then we would recommend utilizing that E-Verify. Know who's on your job site. Have a clear system or policy in place for who to call. Again, sitting down as an organization and saying, what is our stance if ICE shows up? Putting together a clear policy for who to call, what to do, and then making sure that everybody understands that policy. And some clients who even do sort of like fire drills, they're doing ICE drills where they've got their policy, they are making sure they know what to do if this occurs, because it truly can be disruptive to a business. And then finally, call your lawyer if you do get into a situation like this. They are obviously here to help. They probably dealt with this situation more frequently than you have. They can either be there or talk you through it. They can work with ICE, and oftentimes they can help save you from additional fines or any other issues that you may occur.
Yeah, lastly, we had a really good question in the chat asking, what do we have to do? I mean, are they allowed to sort of act on reasonable suspicion like a police agency might be able to do, or can we insist on a warrant? And the answer is yes, we can insist on a warrant. They don't have any additional rights to your to the job site or to your facility. The important thing is this is the concepts I think are relatively straightforward. Don't panic, take down the information. We are obligated to comply. We're not obligated to cooperate. Those concepts are simple. It's really hard to apply them in the sort of call the heat of the moment. And we have seen reports, I've not experienced it myself, but reports that these officers are trying to do a job, right? They're trying to find people, they're trying to detain them, and they're going to be insistent on getting access to your facility, even if they don't have the right to it. We've even seen reports, credible reports, of ICE agents providing those administrative warrants and representing to an employer that this actually does authorize them to enter your facility, even though it does not. And what I say is, if something like that is going on, what we can do is do our very best. You should do the things we recommended here, but you should never do anything that obstructs them in doing what they're going to do. If we tell them, look, without a warrant, we're not going to provide access to our facility, and they sort of push past you or insist or move on into a private location on the job site or at the facility, don't try to stop them. You can let me and Kevin or your other lawyers deal with this later. Let's not do anything that they would claim obstructs them from doing their job. I don't think that's common, but it does happen. And so if we just keep our heads about ourselves, be polite but insistent that we'll do anything that we're obligated to do, that should work for the huge majority of cases. And you'll experience the least amount of disruption at the job site as you possibly can. So I see that there are a couple of more questions in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and answer those. If you have any more, please plug them in there. But other than that, feel free to take that policy that we provided in the presentation and adopt that, edit it as is appropriate for your organization. But if you want to use that as the framework, that can make a lot of sense. Or if you have some specific needs or specific policies, you can feel free to contact me or Kevin. We can walk you through it. No problem at all. But Greg, that's all that we have this afternoon.
Fantastic. Want to thank you both for presenting and providing the information. And then I wanted to let everyone know that is on the webinar that we are going to get the recording posted and emailed back out to you, as well as the PowerPoint once I receive it from Kevin and Mike. So again, if there are any other questions, or if you have any additional ones and you want to send them my way too, but just know the resources are on the way, and we'll get them to you. Thanks again. Oh, and if you need a beer after you've listened to this presentation, we're having our Connecting the Industry event today from 3 to 5 at Founders. So
all right.
I might see a few of you there, and you both are welcome to join us if you'd like.
Yeah.
We won't make you set up a table and answer questions. We won't do that.
We might just walk right over there right now.
Oh, there's a question in the chat. It looks like, what happens on, for instance, for subcontractors? It's by Stephanie. She had that there.
As a subcontractor, what happens on job sites? For instance, the customer or the GC lets ice into a common area where one of our employees is working. Yeah, right. So, that has more to do with, who has control over the job site. And what I would recommend is that we get some understanding with the GC or the customer on how we're going to respond if something like this happens. I mean, the reality of it is the owner of the property, just like any other property, in many cases has the right to allow or disallow what goes on there. And as a subcontractor, we probably don't have very much ground to stand on to prevent it from happening. So yeah, that would be something to add into the long list of things to talk about with the GC or the property owner to understand how they're going to react. And then the last question, Greg, that I saw is, if a warrant is issued yesterday, is it still valid today? A warrant will have an expiration date on it. So the short answer to the question is yes, it can still be valid the following day, but it'll have an expiration date on it for sure.
Awesome. Great questions.
Bet.
Thank you, Kim, for bumping that back up so we could see it. I missed that one. Thank you. And if there aren't any other questions, or if you have any follow-ups, please let me know, and I can get them over and we can get some answers for you. But again, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thanks for joining us for the Informing the Industry webinar, and I'm certain I'll see a few of you for a beer at Founders later between 3 and 5. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Fred. Take care. Thanks.
Bye.